The security guard smirked. Sir, you can't be in here. This is a private bank. But the old man just smiled and said, I know. I built it. The downtown Atlanta sun blazed down on a polished, glass-walled building that gleamed like a monument to wealth. Inside, the air was cool, the floors silent under Italian leather shoes, and the perfume of money lingered more sharply than any cologne. At the front desk, a woman in a crisp navy uniform arranged brochures for elite accounts when the glass doors whooshed open, and a strange silence fell. In walked an old black man. His shoes were cracked and dust-covered. His olive coat, years out of fashion, hung awkwardly on his thin shoulders. Most curiously, he carried a burlap sack slung over one shoulder, an eyesore amid the sleek black briefcases and designer purses around him. The receptionist frowned. Can I help you, sir? The man paused. He looked up kindly, but with an air of quiet assurance. Yes, child. I'm here to check on my bank. That one sentence sent ripples of disbelief across the room that a young banker at the desk laughed under his breath. The security guard, built like a linebacker, stepped forward. Sir, you might be in the wrong building. This is Monarch Private Bank. Clients only. I'm aware, the old man said calmly. I just want to speak with the manager. Won't take more than a moment. More laughter. A teller whispered to a colleague. You think he's off his meds? The receptionist's polite smile turned tight. Sir, do you have an appointment? No, miss. But trust me, Mr. Gregory Hensley would want to see me. Tell him Elijah Turner stopped by. The name meant nothing to them. Gregory Hensley, the regional director, was known for handling only VIPs. There was no way he'd entertain a man dressed like that. The guard placed a firm hand on Elijah's arm. I'm going to have to ask you to leave now. Elijah didn't flinch. I understand. But if you turn me away, you'll regret it by sundown. That was the last straw. Okay, let's go, the guard said, gripping Elijah tighter. But just as he reached for the man's sack, intending to escort him out, Elijah stepped back, firm yet graceful. I wouldn't do that if I were you, he warned gently. Then came the moment no one expected. Outside, a black Range Rover with tinted windows screeched to a stop. Four men in tailored suits jumped out, walking with purpose. The doorman tried to intercept them, but one flashed a gold emblem. Federal Financial Oversight Commission. The room froze. The lead man stormed up to the receptionist. Where's Mr. Elijah Turner? The receptionist's eyes widened. She turned slowly toward the old man with the sack. Elijah raised a hand. I'm right here. The suited man nearly bowed. Mr. Turner, we're so sorry for the delay. We just got word you'd be visiting this branch today. Shall we proceed to the boardroom? Every mouth fell open. Gregory Hensley himself came sprinting down from the mezzanine level. His face was pale. Mr. Turner, sir, I had no idea. Elijah smiled calmly. Yes, Gregory. That's the problem. He reached into the sack and pulled out a leather-bound folder. Inside were ownership documents, bank shares, and signatures older than most of the staff in the room. The papers were crisp and indisputable. Elijah Turner wasn't a delusional old man. He was the founding investor and largest shareholder of Monarch Private Bank, long hidden behind a shell trust and decades of silence, and he had come to see how his legacy was being handled. The boardroom of Monarch Private Bank was designed to impress. Polished mahogany stretched from one end of the room to the other, beneath a crystal chandelier that looked like it belonged in a palace. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the glittering skyline of Atlanta, but today, no one was admiring the view. Everyone's eyes were on Elijah Turner. He stood calmly at the head of the table, the same worn burlap sack now resting beside his leather chair. The same sack that, just minutes ago, had drawn judgmental stares and whispers. The atmosphere was thick with tension as the branch manager, Gregory Hensley, sat awkwardly across from him, sweat visibly collecting at his temples. No one spoke. Elijah finally broke the silence. So, he began, his voice steady and low. This is how my bank greets its own founder? Hensley cleared his throat. Mr. Turner, I deeply apologize for the misunderstanding. We had no idea. No, you didn't, Elijah interrupted. And that is precisely what concerns me. He opened the leather folder again and pulled out a faded photograph. It showed a much younger Elijah, standing in front of a brick building with the original Monarch Trust and loan sign above the door. He was holding hands with a woman, his late wife, Ruth. This was 1982. The day we broke ground. Ruth and I saved for 10 years to buy that first building. I scrubbed toilets and delivered newspapers while studying business law at night. We dreamed of building a bank that welcomed people who looked like us, people who had doors slammed in their faces by the other banks. A hush fell over the room. And for a while, we did just that, he continued. I remained silent in the background, letting others take the public role. It was safer that way, they said. Less controversial. He looked directly at Hensley. And now, 4 decades later, I walk into my own building, and your staff treat me like I'm trash on the sidewalk. They laugh in my face, threaten to call the police, all because of what I look like. I'm deeply ashamed, Hensley stammered. They didn't know. They didn't care to know, Elijah corrected him. And that's worse. Suddenly, a young woman at the far end of the table, Jasmine Carter, a junior compliance officer, spoke up. Mr. Turner, I'm so sorry. I didn't know your name before today, but I read about Monarch's founding in an old internal memo. I just want you to know, some of us do care. Elijah nodded slowly. Thank you, Miss Carter. It gives me hope that not everything here has been lost. He turned his attention back to the others. I didn't come here today for ceremony or nostalgia. I came because I needed to see, really see, how this place had changed. He stood and walked slowly around the table. I saw a security guard who judged me by my shoes. A receptionist who smiled but dismissed me with her eyes. A banker who laughed behind my back. Not one of them asked who I was. Not one thought I might be more than what I appeared. He stopped behind Hensley. That's not the Monarch I built. That's not the bank I envisioned. Just then, a gentle knock came at the boardroom door. A woman in her 50s entered, Cynthia, the head of internal operations. She was visibly emotional. Elijah, may I call you that? He nodded. I remember you, she said, stepping forward. I was just 19 when you gave me my first job in the mailroom. You said, if you do your work with pride, this place will always have a place for you. I've never forgotten that. Elijah's expression softened for the first time since entering the building. Cynthia, I remember you too. You wore your father's blazer to the interview, and you beat out 10 college grads because you had more heart than all of them combined. There were tears now, not just in Cynthia's eyes, but in Jasmine's, and even in a few board members who sat quietly, reflecting. Elijah looked toward Hensley again. I won't ask for resignations today. That's not my style. But changes are coming. He pointed to his sack. And here are the original founding documents, including a clause that allows me to audit and restructure any branch that fails to uphold the bank's founding values. I invoked it this morning. Hensley's mouth opened slightly. Starting tomorrow, Elijah said calmly, a full investigation will take place. I'll be talking to every department, every staff member, especially the ones no one pays attention to. And when it's over, we'll see who stays. He gathered his things slowly, deliberately. Before he left, he turned to the room one last time. Never judge a man by the weight of his sack or the wrinkles in his coat. You never know who built the building you're standing in. And with that, Elijah Turner walked out, his presence leaving a silence deeper than any boardroom had ever known. Elijah Turner didn't return home after the meeting. Instead, he spent the afternoon walking the halls of the bank he helped build, dressed in the same worn coat and carrying the same burlap sack. This time, the stares were different. Instead of derision, they were filled with fear, curiosity, and in some, shame. He moved quietly through the departments, pausing to speak with tellers, custodians, and assistants. Not the managers, not the ones with power, but those who had none. He asked about their work, their hours, how they were treated, and he listened to in the copy room. A janitor named Miguel confided in him. They say they're about inclusion, but I've worked here 10 years and no one remembers my name. They just call me the cleaner. In the lunchroom, a soft-spoken Vietnamese woman named Lynn whispered, I have a master's degree in accounting, but they never promote me. I've trained for people who now supervise me. Elijah nodded with each story. He didn't lecture or scold. He simply took notes in a small weathered notebook he pulled from the sack. By mid-afternoon, rumors had spread. Executives peeked nervously from their offices as Elijah passed by. HR was in a panic. The legal department had already begun combing through the charter, searching for loopholes in the clause Elijah had invoked. But there were none to in the elevator lobby. A man in a designer suit stepped in front of Elijah. His badge read, James Rowland, VP, Investor Relations. Mr. Turner, he said smoothly, you should know that today's disruption could affect shareholder confidence. You've made quite a stir. Elijah raised an eyebrow. Did you know Monarch's original charter guaranteed annual scholarships to underprivileged students in Atlanta? James blinked. I don't think we still do that. No, you don't, Elijah replied. But I paid for it myself every year until 2007. After that, your board voted it out to increase dividend returns. He stepped closer, voice low. I'm not the one shaking shareholder confidence, Mr. Rowland. Greed did that years ago. I'm just reminding this place what it was meant to be. As Elijah walked away, James stood frozen. Later that day, Elijah returned to the main floor lobby, the very place he'd been dismissed and laughed at that morning. The security guard was gone, replaced with a different one who nodded politely. The receptionist, now pale and somber, stood up as he approached. I owe you an apology, sir, she said, eyes downcast. Elijah looked at her gently. No, child, you owe yourself one. Because someday, someone will treat you like you're invisible, and you'll remember today. He wasn't angry, just tired. But just then, Jasmine Carter appeared beside him. Mr. Turner, the staff from compliance and auditing are gathering in conference B if you'd like to speak with them. He hesitated, then nodded. Inside the room, a dozen employees waited. Some were young. Some had been there for decades. And all wore the same uncertain expression. Jasmine introduced him, but Elijah didn't need fanfare. I want to ask you all a question, he began. What do you think this bank stands for? The room was quiet. Finally, a man named Victor, from Risk Assessment, raised his hand. Profit. The answer hung heavy in the air. Elijah smiled sadly. That's what it's become. But it's not what it was built for. He walked slowly, letting his words land with purpose. It was built to give people a chance. People who'd been told no by every other bank. It was meant to say, your background doesn't matter here. Your future does. A woman in the back, Sarah, whispered, that's not how we're trained anymore. I know, Elijah replied. That's why I'm here. He set the burlap sack down again, this time pulling out a small bronze plaque. Tarnished, but still legible, it read, this institution was founded to serve the people, not power. Elijah and Ruth Turner, 1982. Gasps filled the room. Jasmine stepped forward and read the words aloud. We had it removed from the lobby in the remodel, said Victor quietly. We were told it didn't fit the aesthetic. Elijah didn't respond. He didn't need to. That night, after most employees had left, Elijah remained in the building, alone. He sat at a bench outside the bank, looking at the stars rising over Atlanta. The skyline had changed. So had the world. But some truths, he knew, were eternal. He looked down at the sack beside him. IT wasn't just full of papers or memories, that IT was full of purpose. The next morning, Monarch Private Bank opened as usual. But something in the air felt different. The front lobby was unusually quiet. The polished marble floors that usually echoed with the confident clicks of Louboutin heels and leather loafers now carried a hush of uncertainty. At precisely 9 a.m., Elijah Turner arrived again. This time escorted not by security, but by Jasmine Carter. She held the door open with quiet reverence as the elderly man stepped in, wearing the same olive coat and holding that same old sack. But now, no one laughed. Employees stood as he passed. Some bowed their heads. Others tried not to meet his eyes. A few whispered soft good mornings with the hesitant tone of people who realized they'd missed something and someone important. Elijah made no speech. He simply walked over to the blank wall where a modern chrome sign read, Monarch Private Bank, Innovation, Trust, Growth. He studied it, then nodded to Jasmine. Bring the plaque, he said softly. She pulled the bronze plaque from a protective case and handed it to a maintenance worker standing nearby. Elijah turned to him. Son, what's your name? Deshawn, sir. Would you do me the honor of restoring what was lost? Deshawn nodded solemnly and knelt down. With careful hands, he drilled into the marble wall. The bank's executives watched from a respectful distance. Gregory Hensley was there, his usual confidence now replaced with humility. When the plaque was mounted, a quiet ripple moved through the room. This institution was founded to serve the people, not power. Elijah and Ruth Turner, 1982. The bronze glinted under the lobby lights. It was no longer just decoration. It was a declaration. Elijah stepped back, took a breath, and turned to face the crowd that he wasn't just a founder now, that he was a mirror. I came here dressed like this for a reason, he said, sweeping his hand down his coat. Because I needed to know if the soul of this place had survived the gloss. He scanned the faces in front of him. Some looked ashamed, some looked inspired, but all were listening. You see, I never cared about shiny walls or corner offices. I cared about the single mother applying for her first mortgage, the immigrant family trying to open a corner store, the janitor who just wants a loan without being humiliated. He paused. And I still care. From the crowd, Cynthia, the operations veteran, stepped forward holding something behind her back. Elijah. I found this in storage last night. She revealed a framed photo. Elijah and Ruth, standing proudly in front of the first Monarch branch, arms around each other. Elijah reached out, gently running his fingers over the glass. I thought this was gone. No, Cynthia said. Just hidden. He nodded. We hide a lot of things in this country. Pain, history, people. But I'm not hiding anymore. Suddenly, a voice rang out from the crowd. Sir, what are your plans now? It was a young intern, barely 20. Her eyes were wide, filled with admiration and curiosity. Elijah smiled. I plan to listen more. Visit every branch. Talk to the people no one notices. And I plan to make sure this bank remembers what it was built for. He lifted his sack one last time and placed it gently beneath the newly mounted plaque. It's time to stop decorating with mission statements we don't live by. As the crowd began to disperse, there was no applause. No grand send-off, just respect and a quiet, collective vow to do better. By the end of the week, the bank was no longer the same. The once hushed whispers about Elijah Turner had turned into deliberate conversations about values, about legacy, about conscience. Managers started walking the floors more, asking questions they hadn't asked in years. How are you doing? What's working for you? What's not? And at the heart of it all stood the man with the sack. But today, Elijah came with something else. He arrived early, before the building opened, and asked Jasmine to accompany him to the top floor, the executive suite. It was a space he had never set foot in, despite being its silent owner for decades. The large windows poured golden light over polished floors and expensive artwork. Jasmine asked gently, "Why today?" Elijah didn't answer immediately. He walked to the window and looked down at the city he loved. "Today is Ruth's birthday," he said softly that Jasmine's breath caught. "I didn't know." She always said, "One day, you'll take your name off those dusty papers and remind them who built this place." He chuckled lightly. I guess she was right again. He reached into the sack, pulling out a small envelope, yellowed, sealed, addressed in a graceful, feminine hand. To the future of Monarch. Open when they forget. Inside was a handwritten letter. Ruth's handwriting. Jasmine stepped back instinctively. Sensing this was sacred, Elijah read aloud that to those who will one day inherit this building, but not its memory. Monarch was not born out of money. It was born out of injustice. We were denied loans, denied dignity, and told we did not belong. So we built the place ourselves, for those who had been told no their whole lives. Please don't forget that if you are reading this, it means something has gone wrong. But it also means there's a chance to make it right. Remember, this place does not belong to the rich. It belongs to the ready. To the ones who dare to believe they are worthy of more. That if Elijah is still around, listen to him. If he is not, look to those who serve without applause. That's where the soul of this place lives, with hope. Ruth Turner. Elijah folded the letter carefully and handed it to Jasmine. Put this somewhere they'll never dare to hide again. Jasmine nodded, unable to speak. Later that afternoon, an announcement was made. Monarch's board had voted unanimously to restore the Turner Scholarship, to reopen its community lending program, and to rename the downtown headquarters. The Elijah and Ruth Turner building the plaque was ordered immediately. No one objected. And just before Elijah left for the day, a young intern, Madison, stopped him. "Mr. Turner, may I ask something?" "Of course." She hesitated. "How did you keep believing in something, even when they forgot you?" He smiled, eyes warm but tired. "Because forgetting is human. But remembering, that's a choice." He looked at the plaque now hanging proudly in the lobby. And today, they chose right.